Your AI harness is not your service model. The enterprise AI conversation is moving beyond the model. The question is no longer only which model are we using? It is increasingly which tools can the agent access? Which actions can it take? Which data can it rely on? Where is human approval required? How are decisions traced? How is performance evaluated? This is the domain of the AI harness. An AI harness is the operational framework around the model. It manages inputs, tool access, context, state, permissions, and workflow execution. Evals, guardrails, and observability help test and control the resulting behavior. That is real progress. A model alone is capability potential. The harness turns that potential into operational behavior. But for UK technology and service firms, an important distinction follows. Your enterprise customer does not ultimately buy the harness. They buy the service effect it enables. A resolved ticket, a prioritized incident, a recommended customer action, a processed application, a prepared decision, a completed workflow. The moment an AI contribution changes a real service case, technical control meets commercial responsibility. The harness may determine what the agent is permitted to read, write, recommend, or execute, but it does not by itself answer the questions that determine whether the offer is genuinely buyable. What service is the customer purchasing? Which outcome is being promised? What must the provider deliver? What must the client contribute? Where does implementation end and where does ongoing service delivery begin? Which decisions remain human? Who reviews an exceptional case? Who explains the outcome when the technical trace is complete, but the operational result is disputed? This is not an argument against harness engineering. It is an argument for understanding its boundary. An audit trail can show what happened. It does not establish who was entitled to approve the resulting action. An evaluation can test performance. It does not define who owns the decision when the case falls outside the expected pattern. A permission system can restrict access. It does not define the service being changed, the client contribution required, or the escalation obligation created. The harness itself is also not permanent. It reflects assumptions about what the model can and cannot do. As models improve, those assumptions change, the harness changes with them. That means a temporary technical framework cannot substitute for a clear service model. For a UK provider, this becomes a commercial issue. A prospective customer must be able to understand what is being bought, how it will be delivered, and what happens when the system reaches its limits. The buyer needs clarity on the promised outcome. They need clarity on the provider's contribution and on the client's own contribution. They also need clarity on implementation, integration, and operational boundaries, as well as proof, acceptance, and escalation. Without that clarity, the technology may be impressive while the offer remains difficult to approve. It may also be difficult to price, difficult to contract, difficult to implement, and difficult to scale. This matters particularly when a UK provider enters a new market. In the home market, important assumptions may remain invisible. Existing relationships may compensate for unclear delivery boundaries. Familiar references may compensate for weak proof. Long-standing customers may already understand what the provider does and what the client must contribute. A new Swiss buyer does not automatically share those assumptions. The Swiss buyer has to evaluate the offer from the outside. They need to understand the service, the outcome, the evidence, and the operational boundary clearly enough to authorize the purchase. That is why localizing the message is not always enough. The issue may not be the wording, the issue may be the service definition underneath the wording. The same applies to pilots. A pilot without a clear hypothesis, client contribution, and decision criteria may generate activity without producing useful evidence. The same applies to local partners. A partner can create access. A partner cannot compensate for an offer that remains difficult to understand, approve, or deliver. And the same applies to hiring. A local salesperson cannot resolve a buying case that has not yet been clearly defined. The central management question is therefore not only can the agent do this, it is also can the customer understand the resulting service? Can they authorize it? Can they integrate it? Can they evaluate it? Can they trust the proof? And can both sides explain what happens when the case does not follow the expected path? For UK technology and service firms, this is where AI expertise becomes market entry relevance. The competitive advantage may not come from another model upgrade. It may come from making the AI-enabled service easier to buy, easier to deliver, and easier to defend. That requires clear service boundaries, clear provider and client contributions, clear acceptance criteria, clear human decision points, clear evidence, and clear escalation logic. The core distinction is the harness makes the agent operational. The service architecture makes the offer buyable. Before committing to a Swiss hire, partner, or pilot, test whether the buyer can understand, authorize, and trust the resulting service effect. First test the buying case, then invest in Switzerland. This is Tom from Ali Ali. Talk to you soon.